trying to say everything I've got to ask. He's talking over me. I'm the person that's there supposed to be in this debate. I can't even get a word in. And as soon as I say one thing, the other guy, defendant number 2, he's overriding and talking over me. I'm just sitting there patiently, just quiet, okay. You can see me, I'm just sitting there. Then all of a sudden I have something powerful to say and a response to say. Boop, disconnects, video disconnects right when I start talking again. No more video feed gone. I'm like, this is crazy. Now I see what's going on. This is an actual setup, because every time he would come back and start talking dogmatically and talking all this garbage, he would then pick up his cup and do this and give a smirk.
As many of you know, there was a recent debate between, or a conversation or informal debate or discussion between an individual by the name of Wesley Huff and Billy Carson. Billy Carson, very popular on YouTube, over 1 million followers on one channel, and then another 600,000 or 300,000 on 3 or 4 other channels. A person who has a very large audience that he is entertaining with his commentary. And Wesley Huff, not so much. Wesley Huff now has a YouTube channel, probably sitting at about over 60,000 subscribers, recently blowing up because of his interaction with Billy Carson. As you know, there has been a couple videos, one where entertaining or conversing concerning the actual conversation. And then there's another video that was put out where Wesley Huff says that Billy Carson is attempting to sue Wesley Huff because of this said debate or conversation. And so here it is, this conversation took place, and you know that Billy Carson had to make a video explaining what happened because Billy Carson has said that he felt that the debate was fake, that it was a fake debate, a debate that he didn't know happened, or a conversation that he didn't know the intels or the details of what was supposed to happen. Billy Carson even goes so much as to say that he was ambushed by his friend Mark and Wesley Huff. And so, according to Billy Carson, this debate was a sham. This debate was fake. It was a terrible conversation. It wasn't the best thing. It wasn't good. It wasn't well done. It was just a total false representation of what the conversation was to be. And Billy Carson was totally caught off guard. And so I watched the response that Billy Carson gave last night, and just say that I was not impressed. I felt that Billy Carson ranted versus dealing with the actual debate itself. He ranted, he cried, he whined. This whole almost 4-hour stream was about 80% of him ranting about and crying and whining about, oh, it wasn't fair, oh, it was a sham, oh, I didn't have a chance to respond to this and that and to this and that and to this and that, oh, the video was skipping in and out, oh, Wesley Huff, every time I wanted to respond, Wesley Huff video went out. This is far from the truth. I watched the whole debate. I seen the clips. I seen when Wesley Huff's videos went out, and I would even argue that the debate turned into a 2v1, 2 versus 1. Billy Carson and Mark versus Wesley Huff. So from all estimations, from all optics, it appeared that Wesley Huff was the lone rider on his side of the debate, because there certainly was parts of the debate, more like the last 30 or 40 minutes of the conversation, where Wesley Huff was by himself, basically arguing against Mark and Billy Carson. So overall, I thought the response by Billy Carson last night was an absolute nonsense. And we're going to get to his response, and we're going to get into the debate itself, because footage within the debate refutes Billy Carson's commentary on what happened during this conversation. But the part of Billy Carson's response that we're going to jump into is right after he cried and whined about being sick. Now, this is not me making fun of him or anything like that, or undermining how sick he was, or nothing like that. Perhaps he was very sick, and according to Billy Carson, he was near death. And perhaps that's true, he was near death. But why did you even entertain a conversation of this matter if you were sick in that capacity? You can say, well, I just wanted to get up and do something, which he does say. I just wanted to get up and do something. I can't see myself laying down. But once again, this is a high-end conversation. It's a high-end level of intellectual conversation. So yes, it's going to take a lot out of you. So why would you even come up and have this conversation, right? So this is Billy Carson's rant, and the video I'm about to show you right here is him right in the middle of him explaining what he came into with the debate. So let's check out Billy Carson and see what he has to say.
On a podcast, I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm like, that sounds like a good idea. Something I can do. And all I got to do is go around the corner from my house. I don't have to even leave the neighborhood. I don't have to go on an airplane, which is what I usually have to do. I can just literally walk around the corner and go in his house. So that's what I did. My wife was extremely unhappy that I told her I was going to go over there. I said, I'll just be like 30 minutes or so. It won't be a big deal. He just wants to have a conversation. We're going to talk about some things. He got somebody else coming on. I really thought it was just going to be like a casual conversation about our perspectives on reality and our perspectives on religion versus spirituality. I really didn't know it was going to be any kind of a debate. Okay. It's more like more of an ambush situation.
According to Billy Carson, this debate was an ambush debate. As he just said, he said it was more, he thought it was going to be more like a conversation. Like he said, the fact is that the conversation, it was just that. It was just as a conversation. It was not an ambush. If you look at the debate itself, you notice the level of conversation that they're having. This was not a formal debate. I wouldn't even consider this an informal debate. This was a straight up conversation between Billy Carson, the host Mark, and the host Wesley Huff. This goes to show that all this is about in this response is Billy Carson being butthurt, being upset, being frustrated that he was exposed and that he was embarrassed. And this is what this was totally all about. Even if we look at the debate itself, we can see that this conversation was one conversation that one, Billy Carson enjoyed, and two, was completely informal in its nature and was just a straight up conversation. And it did not appear that this was an ambush because once again, Billy Carson says that he enjoys the conversation. He's enjoying the conversation in the middle of the debate. Let's check it out.
Be equitable in how you are living your life. Reflect Christ accurately. And that's a movement that he is fundamentally working towards that eventually starts to completely take out the legs.
This is where we would argue, Wes. I would be. I love. By the way, I love that we're all. This is respectful. I don't feel this is all just three grown-ups talking in a healthy way.
I appreciate Wes.
And I think this is going to give us. But this is where you and I sitting down in the room. I would be like.
And as you can see, Mark not only points out that he clearly says that this is where we would argue, Wes, indicating that Mark and Billy are on the same side. They're on the same team. They're arguing from the same point of reference against lone Wes Huff. This was not an ambush. This was a conversation that Billy Carson clearly understood was taking place. He clearly understood the intricacies of it, and he clearly seen that Mark was on his side. So this was clearly a 2v1, a 2 versus 1 against Wesley Huff. Also, I said that Billy Carson also said that he's actually enjoying the conversation. This is a clear indication of someone who's well aware of the debate. He's well aware of the content of the debate. He's well aware of who he's interacting with. Who in the world says that they're enjoying the conversation? They're enjoying this if they were ambushed, if they were tricked, if they were bamboozled. No one in their right mind would say such a thing. This is complete and utter nonsense. And the video, his response, Billy Carson's response last night was complete nonsense. It was a complete sham. There is no way that Billy Carson was ambushed. There's no way Billy Carson was caught off guard. There's no way that his sickness, quote unquote sickness, was hurting him, was preventing him from interaction. Because once again, he said that he was enjoying the conversation. He was enjoying this. Billy Carson, this is no more than you crying and whining, complaining because you got embarrassed and exposed. That's all this is. And last night's stream was complete nonsense. Let's continue on with what Billy Carson has to say.
And I have all the text messages to prove this, which are going to be in the discovery for defendant number 1. Anyway, so I go over there. I'm a little gassed, but whatever. I'm just happy to be involved in anything at this point. I sit down, get mic'd up and everything else. I get myself some water. I give him that warning about my coughing so that he knows, like, if you just pause it every now and then, you might have to edit the coughs out. Okay, I think that's on recording actually from the beginning of the video. They probably edited that out already, whatever. And then he brings on this guy on the screen, defendant number 2. So defendant number 2 comes on the screen. I have no idea who this guy is. I literally have no clue who this guy is. I don't know his name. I don't know who he is. I don't recognize him from anywhere. Like some Joe Schmo off the street. I have no clue who this guy is. But whatever. He seemed like a nice gentleman. I thought we were going to have a really nice conversation. Now, this whole time, I'm thinking this is just going to be a conversational based thing. Not a big deal. I don't got to stress my brain. I don't got to think too hard. We're just talking.
Billy Carson says that he thought this was just going to be a conversation, that they were just going to be talking. That's exactly what took place. If you watch the conversation was only an hour and 34 minutes long. If you watch the whole debate, the whole conversation as I have, it was just that. Mark was jumping in, he was interacting with Wesley Huff. And in my opinion, I think Mark talked too much. I think he was sort of took away from the fullness of the conversation because Mark was rambling. He was interjecting his personal feelings. He was going on long-winded diatribes. It was just, Mark was just a little bit taking the conversation away. Because the conversation between Wes Huff and Billy Carson was actually very enjoyable. And once again, I already played the footage to where it shows that Billy Carson was actually enjoying the conversation. And yes, if you watch the whole conversation, it was just a conversation. This was not a formal debate or anything like that. This was there's a difference between a formal debate and informal debate in a conversation. A formal debate is what you may see on The Gospel Truth, where 2 opponents and a moderator come on screen, and the moderator ensures that the debate is done in a formal manner with opening statements, rebuttals, cross-examinations, and closings, and probably a Q&A from the audience. And an informal debate would just take away from that just a little bit. The cross-examination may not be time structured. It may just be a free-flowing conversation where people can interject and jump on certain concepts in the middle of statements and things like that, right? It's less formal. It may not even have a rebuttal round. It may or may not even have an opening statement. It may just go right into conversation. A debate that has no kind of format at all, not formal or informal within the context of structure, may just be like this, what Billy Carson and Wes Huff had, where there wasn't any opening statements or anything like that. There wasn't any rebuttals. It was just conversation going back and forth, even allowing the quote unquote Mark being the moderator, which he wasn't. He wasn't a moderator. He didn't call himself a moderator. He was just there to ensure the conversation happened because he knew Billy Carson personally and he knew Wes Huff personally. So he just got the conversation together. So this was no more than just a conversation. This was not a formal debate. This was not even an informal debate. This was just a conversation. That's what this was. But here goes Billy Carson once again, coping, crying and whining and saying that he was ambushed. Oh, this was not a formal debate. He is coping, guys. Complete cope on full high levels, 100% levels of cope. This is exactly what this is. Let's continue on to see what Billy Carson has to say.
And then Mark gets this guy on the live feed, and he says, "Hey, we're gonna have a little debate." I'm like, "A debate?" He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna talk about this, your perspective of religion and stuff and so on, whatever." And I'm like, "Huh?" I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And so now in the debate, the way that this works, I've been in debates before, real debates, okay, like from school, the debate club. I understand what a real debate actually is because I've actually been in actual real debates. There's a moderator, a person that moderates. The moderator, him or herself, does not interfere with the conversation. They don't interfere, you see? They don't commandeer the conversation. And the moderator is there to allow both parties to actually get a chance to talk and get their point across. But that's not what happened. What happened was, as we opened this up, the moderator asked the first question, not the defendant number 2. Okay.
So once again, I would agree with Billy Carson that Mark was way too involved in the conversation. He was inundating his personal feelings, things like that, things he struggled with, and things that made him question his Christian faith. Right. All that said, that did not take away from the conversation. Billy, well, it might have taken away from the conversation in the sense that he could allow Billy and Wes Huff to explain, but the way that Billy Carson is explaining this or showing concerns about this is as if Mark was taking time away from Billy Carson. I would say that he was actually taking time away from Wes Huff. Mark was, with his diatribe, with his commentary, with his monologue. And so that's what I feel. If you watch the debate, that's clearly the indication that he was taking away more from Wes Huff than he was taken away from Billy Carson. And this clip I'm about to show you is just one example of many times within the debate that showed Mark going on these dialogues that took up too much time for him to be sort of the moderator, if you will, of the two. Let's check it out.
Great that you came to that, but like, what were the methodologies did you use to conclude that him saying the slave be the master to the slave, you're able to interpret it meaning that he's meaning that? Because I was also raised in the church, and I would question when they're like, oh, in the old days when they said women don't wear jewelry, that's a sin. You would know the exact verse. And then they're like, oh, but that was just written because at that time, that was what they did. But then the next week they're telling me, but if you believe in the Bible, you either believe in all of it or none of it. I'm like, well, how come you're just, and they're like, but it's okay for women to do that. Now, those are the things where it's like, we've got to be honest here. Like, if you're respectfully challenging Billy, and Billy's going to go and do research and be like, okay, now I want to see how to have, because we're all critical thinkers. Those things seem to just get so blindly pushed over when they're like, but that doesn't apply now. And it's like, I think there's more common ground than people think, and so many words to recall, but also, like, it's weird to me to think that he would be like, women aren't allowed to wear jewelry and this crap. And then Jesus came and he's like, none of that matters. And then for them to be like, oh, that only made sense then, but now it doesn't apply. But believe everything in the Bible all applies. You know what? Like, as a Christian myself, this is why, like, I'm always like,
So there's a discipline called hermeneutics, and that's the methodology of interpretation. So there are multiple levels that you interpret something. So whether we're dealing with, say, the book of Ephesians, or we're dealing with Tacitus's Annals, we look at something and we contextually read it within the framework of how it's being written. So there's a historical approach where we look at the context. Okay, Paul is writing to a church in Ephesus. What's going on in Ephesus, and how is what he's saying in that city in what is modern day Turkey, how does that pertain to that particular time and framework? Where is Paul coming from?
How does it pertain to now, though, is my question. Because
so
you're giving me,
here's how I answer that question.
And I love you to death, Wes, but you're starting to give, sorry to interrupt you. I believe in God. Like, I believe in, and Billy believes in God too. I get why things are challenged and things need to be challenged, but it's saying that was to women then, but being raised in the church and stuff, they say, but then they'll pick something and they're like, but that doesn't apply to them now, because in that context, he was talking to that certain. And
as you can see, Mark, who Billy Carson calls the moderator, was interjecting a bunch of times. This is not something that Mark was, this is a one-time thing in the clip I just showed you. Mark did this repeatedly throughout the debate. And but Mark did it towards the latter half of the debate, towards the halfway point, probably towards the halfway point, and then forward after that. Mark was interjecting himself a lot. He was getting his opinion in a lot. But once again, his opinion was not being interjected on Billy Carson's time. his opinion was being interjected majority of Wes Huff time. Now, it did happen to where Billy Carson was trying to get a word in, but Mark was continuously going on and on and on and on and on. But once again, this was not, it was not the fact that Mark was attempting to try to ambush Billy Carson. He was not interjecting on Billy Carson to stop him from explaining his position. There was no indication within the debate that showed this type of behavior for Mark. Mark just had to run his mouth, and he was running his mouth and talking too much, in my opinion, once again, taking away from the enjoyment of the conversation. But once again, this was not Mark running his mouth in order to undercut Billy Carson. As you can see in the video that I just showed you, the clip of the debate that I just showed you, that Mark was actually undercutting Wes. Wes was attempting to explain a difficult part of scripture that many people struggle with when it comes to slavery and the treatment of women and things like that. Many people struggle with these areas, and it has to do with historical context and hermeneutics, as Wes said. Wes was attempting to explain this portion of scripture to them, but once again, Mark cut him off 2 times and went on long monologues. This was just one example of Mark doing this, and it was towards Wes Huff. And once again, as I said earlier, this also indicates that this debate or conversation turned into a 2v1, a 2 versus 1. As you can see, Mark was definitely on Billy Carson's side in this portion of the debate. Like I said, moderators have the ability within these type of free flowing conversations like this to step in and sort of move the conversation. If the conversation is sort of stuck in one place too long, they will jump in and sort of move the conversation to a different portion of the topic in order to continue moving the discussion, which is completely fine. And plus, this is Mark's podcast. Mark has all the right to step in and say what he wants to say. But would I say that Mark was stepping in and saying what he wants to say in order to undercut Billy? No way. Absolutely not. Once again, go back and watch the debate. That just simply wasn't the case. Once again, Billy Carson's statement is absolutely false. They're fraudulent and they're untrue. And here it is. We got Billy Carson looking to sue Mark himself, the guy that's the host of this podcast, and other individuals, including Wesley Huff, because of this conversation. The fact is that the only reason Billy Carson is trying to sue is because he's completely embarrassed and he's exposed. And he doesn't like that, right? He seems to be a person that likes to control everything and control the narratives. And as soon as that narrative is swept from under him and he can't control it, he gets irritated and he gets frustrated. Let's continue on and see what Mark has to say. Let's continue on and see what Billy has to say.
Now, that's interesting. So I go, okay, this is from the jump. I'm like, well, that's kind of strange. If this is a debate, then it's supposed to be a little bit more organized. I said, well, maybe he doesn't have the etiquette of knowing debates like I do, because I've been in real debates and so whatever. I didn't think of nothing of it at that exact moment. So the first thing he asked me is about the gospel, the gospel of Jesus's wife. Okay. I think that was the first thing. It might have been the second thing, but it might have been the first thing. Either that or the Sinai Bible question. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I give my answer about the gospel of Jesus's wife, to what I knew about it. Not even a deep answer, just a very surface answer. I'm just like, whatever, man. I'm just surviving at this moment. And then the gentleman, defendant number 2, he comes back with all this rhetoric about it's a known fake and it's this and that and everything else and it's no good and it doesn't exist and blah, 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 or it's fake or whatever he's talking about. I'm like, okay, well, let me get my rebuttal in on this fakeness. But I never got a chance to get my rebuttal in because I had something very important to say about that, which I'm going to talk about tonight about the gospel of Jesus's wife. And I'm going to play a couple of short videos as well. Okay. And then,
now, Billy Carson claims that, I never got my rebuttal in. I never got my commentary in. Right now, he's attempting to accuse Mark and Wes of concluding and ambushing him, saying that he never was able to refute or converse about the conversation, about the Sinai issue, the Sinai Bible, or things like that, after it was brought up and after Wesley Huff exposed it. This is what Billy Carson is simply trying to say. But looking at the video footage, we clearly understand that is after Wesley Huff went on and explained his position concerning the Sinai Bible, he actually asked, he actually asked Billy Carson, did he mean the Sinai Bible, the Codex Sinaiticus, right? He actually explained it, asked him questions. What do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? So there was a free-flowing interaction between Billy Carson and Wes Huff. There was no indication that the video was cut out. There's no indication that the video had jump skips, where a portion of the video was edited out in the middle of that conversation concerning the Sinai Bible or the Codex Sinaiticus. There was no indication of that. But Billy Carson claimed that he never got his word in. He never got his word in. Well, let's take a look and see exactly what happened in that portion of the debate, and let's see. Was it Wes Huff not allowing him to have a word in, or was it Mark not allowing him to have a word in? Let's see exactly what happened in that portion of the debate so we can all come to a proper conclusion. Let's check it out.
Learn to critically think and continue to come to your conclusions. Even with Jesus, I'm not personally even waiting on that he has to come back to say, I already know I'm, like I said, that strength of God.
When you refer to the Sinai Bible free, some of these facts, do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Like I said, that strength of God and consciousness is already, I can tap into that right now. So you don't have to wait for him to come back. For those that believe he does, to actually have that like next level of what that's supposed to mean. But Wes, go ahead on for what Billy was talking about. I think with a book in the Harvard Museum, and I heard something about Jesus's wife, which that's here.
Should really tell
Wannabe. I like how you threw that in the bio right there. And Wesley, my man, I think it would be great to. I know you guys were both recently in Egypt. There's tons that I'm interested in. That how all these things show up in Egypt is baffling to me. But just going right to it, I had here, Billy, you talk about how Jesus was never crucified, which is interesting because my wife, who's a Muslim, they believe that as well. Mm-hmm. Their beliefs, from what I understand from her, are they don't think that Jesus, as they believe is a prophet, God would have him killed. But I don't think they have any historical evidence, as far as I know, as to what or how or why they believe that. I'm curious for you guys both, and if you want to, I guess, go first, Billy, as to how you came about, like the findings where it seems that Jesus was not crucified, or that's not accurate.
Sure. And in my videos, and if you listen to the podcast, the statement is according to the Sinai Bible. Okay, according to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible. And that Bible predates the King James Version of the Bible, and the text there actually is about 12 to 14,000 differences between the Sinai Bible and the King James Version of the Bible, which came much later. And then also one of the things that were interesting is that they discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary, which, according to some scholars, is a little controversial, but they claim that this is an accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then, adds more, if that's true, it adds more to the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified. I just personally believe that Jesus was an amazing human being. I don't think that he was the Son of God in the sense that he's God, but that we're all gods. As he said, ye are gods, and that we're to do greater things in him. And I just personally believe that the return of the Christ is the return of the Christ consciousness. When we can all achieve a certain level of knowledge, wisdom, passion, understanding, empathy, love that he came to this planet with, and we get that in our mind and our conscience, and we can act on those incredible emotions and that understanding, that the whole world is going to transform instantaneously. And I think at the second coming is the coming of the Christ consciousness to the planet, not a human being flying back to Earth to save people. That's just my personal understanding of how I've perceived it over many, many years of going through this information and going through all this text.
And Wes, I'm gonna let you respond to that. And again, I mean, this is everyone listening to the show. I'm always like, challenge everything. Learn to critically think and continue to come to your conclusions. Even with Jesus, I'm not personally even waiting on that he has to come back to. I already know I'm, like I said, that strength of God and consciousness is already, I can tap into that right now. So you don't have to wait for him to come back. For those that believe he does, to actually have that like next level of what that's supposed to mean. But Wes, go ahead on for what Billy was talking about, I think with a book in the Harvard Museum, and I heard something about Jesus's wife, which that's, yeah.
Yeah, well, first let me say, I think it's really cool to not just be in the room proverbially with you, Billy, but be able to interact with you, because I wish I could be there in person. Unfortunately, Toronto, Canada is a long way away from Florida. It's a little bit of a jaunt, but I really appreciate the fact that you seem to have investigated to a certain degree some of these facts. Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
When you say the Sinai Bible, what are you referring to specifically?
It's the biblical text that was written. It made it into you can actually look it up on Amazon. It's a Bible called, I have a version at home. It's called the Sinai Bible, right, from Mount Sinai. I'm assuming that's the mountain that they're referencing there. But they put together their own version of the biblical text prior to the King James Version being put out.
Sure. So when you refer to the Sinai Bible, would you be referring to Codex Sinaiticus, like the codex that comes? Okay. That's why I was trying to get some clarification, because so you can actually go and see Codex Sinaiticus is at the British Library. So you can.
All right, so you see within that portion of the conversation, this was the beginning of the portion of the conversation where the conversation started about the Codex Sinaiticus or the Sinai Bible, according to Billy Carson. And so as you can see, Wes Huff asked a question, Billy Carson responded. Wes Huff asked another question. Billy Carson responded with a head nod saying, yes, that's what I was talking about. And so it's clearly seen that Billy Carson was able to respond. He was able to converse. It was Billy Carson that after Wes gave a long explanation concerning the quote unquote Sinai Bible or the Codex Sinaiticus, after giving a long explanation of what that really is and how important that is, and concerning the atonement of Jesus Christ, the death of Jesus Christ, Billy Carson is the one that wanted to shift the conversation. He wanted to say, hey, what about the Old Testament, right? Let's talk about the Old Testament. He tried to shift the conversation to the Old Testament because at that point, in the early portion of this conversation, Wes Huff was dealing Billy Carson a good one. He was gut checking Billy Carson. He was destroying Billy Carson and his nonsense. So what did Billy Carson want to? Billy Carson wanted to shift the conversation. He wanted to say, let's talk about the Old Testament. Let's get out of this. Let's talk about the Old Testament, because he knew that he was way above his pay grade as it concerns this portion of the debate, as it concerns this portion of the conversation. But in Billy Carson's response to the reaction he got from this conversation, that's not all he said. Let's continue on to see what Billy Carson had to say last night in his response to what he called a fake debate.
The second question, or maybe it was the first, like I said, I can't remember. And again, I was so sick and ill, to be quite honest with you. Maybe I did bumble my words a couple times with the Sinai Bible or the Barnabas text.
Oh, look at Billy Carson using his quote unquote illness or sickness as a way to try to take away from what he said. Billy Carson on numerous occasions made the statement that it was the Sinai Bible that made the statement that Jesus was not crucified, or that Jesus did not atone for the sins of the world. It was Billy Carson that said this on numerous podcasts, not just the one he had in this conversation, but on numerous previous conversation. He made the statement of the Sinai Bible, the Sinai Bible, the Sinai Bible. He said it numerous times. Let's check it out.
Never got crucified. As a matter of fact, the Sinai Bible, Jesus was crucified. Well, that doesn't exist in the Sinai Bible. The Sinai Bible. The Sinai Bible. But then you go to the Sinai Bible. In the Sinai Bible. And the Sinai Bible. According to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible.
Yeah, actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there.
Yeah, so according to Billy Carson, he blames that, oh, I was sick and I misrepresented, oh, I misquoted or anything like that because I was sick and I just got out of the hospital. I was hurt. Oh man, I was out of it. That's why I messed up. But were you out of it and sick and all the other crimes you said that the Sinai Bible didn't reference Jesus' atonement? And all the other thousands of podcasts or hundreds of thousands of podcasts that you said the same statement on continuously, were you sick and worn out and misspoke in all these other podcasts as well? I sincerely doubt that you were, Billy Carson. You seem to be a very smart man. You seem to be a man that knows exactly what he's doing. The success that you have built, even though I would say it's through deception, you've done it because you have some level of wherewithal. You have a level of know-how in yourself to be able to build what you have built, and I give you credit for that. But that credit is undermined because of your deceptive talk. Your deceptiveness is what really people are really looking at. And this debate, once again, this conversation exposed your deceptiveness. And this is why you're upset. So it clearly shows in the previous clips that you clearly say the Sinai Bible, this is not you being sick. This is what you really believe. You didn't misquote. You didn't say, oh, my fault in those other podcasts. No, it's clear that you are really, you really have the understanding or really believe that the Sinai Bible doesn't talk about Jesus' atonement. This is what you believe. And so what Wes Huff has done, he's exposed you once again. He's exposed you and showed that you are fraudulent. You are a fraud. You're a complete fraud. You're a liar, the deceiver, and you know what you're doing. Right? You know what you're doing. And what Wes Huff has done is has corrected you. Now it's becoming upon you to correct yourself. Because if you don't correct yourself, now you're a habitual liar. You're a bona fide liar. You're a bold-faced liar. This has nothing to do with misrepresenting or speaking falsely or speaking inaccurately. This is you telling bold-faced lies if you continue with the same dogma. So all in all, this was not you being sick. This was not you being under the weather and sort of not have a cloudy mind or not thinking clearly. This is you speaking falsely and being exposed. And it will be becoming upon you as a responsible adult, admitting you're wrong and going back to the drawing board and correcting your error. That's what men do. Let's continue on and see what else Billy Carson had to say last night.
Quite possible. Look, some of y'all think I'm an alien, but I'm really human. Okay, I'm a person just like you guys are, and to that effect, and being in that weakened state, which he knew he caught me at one of my most weakest states. He saw how I only weighed 206 pounds at his house, so I was very, very frail and thin. I've gained back now 15 pounds, but at the time I was very thin, just weak.
I want you guys to notice how he continues to make this emotional appeal to his audience. I was sick. I was under the weather. In other words, Billy Carson is saying that's why I didn't perform as well. Because I was sick, because I was under the weather. But that once again goes back to the question of why would you take a conversation in this fashion if you were sick and under the weather? Oh, well, he claims that, oh, well, I didn't know who Wes Huff was. Nonsense. Wes Huff actually says that you knew who he was. You knew what you were getting into. Now, the conversation between you and Mark, obviously, I don't know. All of that is off the records. I don't know the conversation that you and Mark took place, but I trust Wes Huff's statement that Wes Huff says that you knew who he was. The fact is, Billy Carson, you took this conversation, you didn't know who Wes Huff was because you didn't do any research on Wes Huff. You thought Wes Huff was just some Joe Schmo stepping on the scene and that you didn't know who he was. You even admit that within your response last night. That you didn't know who Wes Huff was. He was somebody. He was a nobody, or you didn't know who he was. I thought it was just going to be a conversation. That's what your word says. The fact is that you didn't know you were running into a juggernaut. You didn't know that you were running into a brilliant individual in Wes Huff. You didn't know that you was actually running into a PhD student who actually did this on a daily basis. You thought you was running into your average Joe Schmo that you typically run into in your content. The person that you run into that you can sort of quote unquote defeat with your dogma. Oh boy, you ran into a complete bull in Wesley Huff and you wasn't ready for it. How about you just admit that instead of running like a coward and claiming that you were under the weather, you were sick. No, you were just caught off guard by how well-rounded Wes was. That's what really happened. Let's continue on to see what Billy Carson has to say.
But I'm human. I might have bumbled the Barnabas text for the Sinai text or whatever. It doesn't really matter. what matters is I never got a chance to answer any questions or get my voice heard. That's what really matters. But I'm going to break down the Sinai Bible tonight, and I'm going to break down the gospel of Jesus' wife and some other things tonight as well. I'm going to break them down the way that I wanted to talk on that video, but never got a chance to say anything. And then what they did was, they're pretty slick. So every time I had something really important to say or a deep question to ask, defendant number 2 video would just magically disconnect. Boop, he's off again. Oh man, he's off again. I don't know what happened. The first time it happened, I was like, that's strange, because it didn't happen when he was talking, and his video is very clear and crisp, like almost 4K. Then he comes, he gets back into the live feed, to the whatever app they were using. I'm not sure what kind of app it was. He's back on. He's dialed back in. Now I'm trying to ask my question. I'm getting overridden with other texts, other words from defendant number 1. He's overriding what I'm trying to say, everything I've got to ask. He's talking over me. I'm the person that's there supposed to be in this debate. I can't even get a word in. And as soon as I say one thing, the other guy, defendant number 2, he's overriding and talking over me. I'm just sitting there patiently, just quiet, just, okay, you can see me, I'm just sitting there. Then all of a sudden I have something powerful to say and a response to say, boop, disconnects, video disconnects right when I start talking again. No more video feed gone. I'm like, this is crazy. Now I see what's going on. This is an actual setup, because every time he would come back and start talking dogmatically and talking all this garbage, he would then pick up his cup and do this and give a smirk. So I saw then at that moment, I realized, oh, this is a contrived setup video to make me look like I'm some type of dummy and I don't know what I'm talking about. So they can go bragging to all their Christian buddies and friends in their cult and, oh, he didn't know the answer to these 2 questions.
Well, you make yourself look like a dummy and you don't know how to respond to the questions because you just tell false nonsense. And once again, Wes jumped on to correct you, and that is exactly what he did. The fact is that you didn't know who you were dealing with in Wes Huff, but that's all besides the point. Billy Carson makes a statement that the video continued to cut out in the middle of the conversation. Every time he had something to say, the video will cut out. The video will cut out. Every time he had something to say. And so he couldn't get a word in edgewise. He couldn't say anything substantive because the video will cut out every time he began to talk. Well, let's take a look at the video cutouts. Good thing that the debate was uploaded without cutting out the video cutouts. It actually allowed us to see how those video cutouts would happen and see if it would interrupt Billy Carson's nonsense, if it would interrupt Billy Carson's statement. Let's check it out and let's see what happens.
Why did you put that in the Bible? That just confuses everyone, though, because all these other civilizations are going to be reading that.
We have something we keep saying here. God didn't put that in the Bible. Men put this stuff in the Bible.
And I think that with some of the old, I'm telling you, Billy, it's for
now. This is the first cutout right here at the 1:18:42 mark. This is the first cutout where we see Wes Huff video goes out. Now, did that stop Billy Carson from making a substantive statement? No, it seemed that he finished his statement and then Mark jumped into the conversation. While all Wes Huff video is still cut out. Now, we don't know if it was something on Wes's side that caused this video to cut out, and we don't know if it was something Mark was doing. Billy Carson claims that it was Mark cutting the video out, but I don't believe that because Mark appears to be continuing saying what he's saying, and Billy Carson doesn't show any indication that that is what's happening there. But I would say Wes Huff, who knows what's going on Wes Huff's side? His video cut out, maybe his audio cut out, maybe he didn't even hear what Billy had to say, maybe he didn't even hear what Mark has to say. Things happen. Technical difficulties, it happens. That's the point. That's the point of it all, right? That's what happens. It is what it is. But the point is, the fact that I'm trying to make here is that there's no indication that Billy Carson was cut off. He couldn't say anything, that he didn't get to finish what he wanted to say. And the video cutouts interrupted everything he wanted to say. But that is not the only video cutout that we have. We have a couple more. Let's see if those video cutouts had anything to do with Billy Carson saying what he wanted to say. Let's check it out.
Punish you by death.
But if you steal somebody else's slave, you can't steal somebody else's slave. That's not a good thing to do, right? The point that I'm making here, I got to say something before I get out of here, is the Bible is full of contradictions. The biggest problem that we have is we're dealing with a civilization on this planet that is psychologically impaired. Human beings are psychologically impaired. This entire planet, we're living on an insane asylum. Earth is an absolute insane asylum. Mental illness has spread throughout the planet Earth like a complete virus. And when you take a text like the biblical text, knowing that human beings globally are mentally ill, this entire planet is a mental insane asylum. And I'm talking everyone. Every single, all 8 billion, whatever number of people we have now, are all mentally ill. And what I mean is there's different levels of mentally ill. We all have trauma that we're not dealing with. We all have internal issues. We all have situations that shadow work that needs to be done. And so, and some people are at higher levels of mental illness than others. Most of us are functional mental illness people. But when you take a look at the biblical text and you start going through this information, and it's the way that it's laid out, it becomes a proponent of more divide and conquer tactics. It becomes a proponent of racism. It becomes a proponent of slavery. It becomes a proponent of all these things that are dark and ill, including murder and killing in the name of God, which has been done how many millions of times. So my thing about the biblical text is it actually authored by the creator of the universe, or is it authored by the dark forces of, maybe, if this Satan is real, Satan himself? And the reason why I say that is because all-knowing, all-loving God, omnipotent and omniscient, that is creating not only this universe, probably most likely multiple universes, because a creator never stops creating, especially with infinite power, is now at some point going to author a text that is going to allow human beings to misinterpret it and take it in his name and begin to slay people, torture people, and enslave people worldwide, to claim that you're chosen ones, to set up a state of chosen people, and then to even claim that you have chosen land, and to torture and kill even more people, women and children, in modern times, still going on to this very day. To me, that doesn't seem like a very intelligent being, especially a being that knows the beginning and the end. So if you know the beginning and the end, you have a certain level of foreknowledge. You have advanced knowledge that goes beyond. You know what's the ending before the end even occurs. So you set up everything for success. Why? Because a genius solves problems before they happen. And I'm going to drop the mic on that.
With some of that too, I think came back on.
Yeah.
So as you can see, Billy Carson went on this long monologue concerning what he was talking about, right? Slavery and things like that, right? He was going on that the world has a mental illness, right? He went on this long monologue, and this was when Wesley Huff camera cut out. Did it interrupt Billy Carson? No, it did not. Did it stop Billy Carson from saying what he wanted to say? No, it did not. If anyone who was at a disadvantage, it might have been Wes Huff who was at a disadvantage because of the fact that his video cut out. And we don't know if his audio cut out. His video could have cut out, right? And we don't know that. Now, once again, Billy Carson claims that Mark was it appeared that Mark was cutting the video in and out. If you do any kind of podcasting, if you do any kind of live streaming, you know that when you lose a camera of someone, a guest on your podcast, you're looking to see if it's something that you did on your side. You're clicking away, you're trying to get your guest back, you're trying to get the guest camera back. That's what you do. I do it. Anyone who's ever had an issue with live streaming where their guest drops out, you're looking to see if something that you might have hit something on accident. You might have done something, so you're trying to fix it. But it appeared that it probably was Wes Huff's side, because when his camera came back, he adjusted it, right? So it looked like maybe it was something on Wes Huff's side that was causing the camera to go out. All that being said, there was no indication that Wes Huff's camera going out was impeding Billy Carson's statement. Billy Carson was able to get off whatever he had to go say, especially in the lighter portions here where Billy Carson was getting ready to leave. And he went on and gave his final statement. And so this clearly shows that Billy Carson is lying. He's a grifter. He's misleading. He's not being completely honest with what he is being said. He said that he was at a disadvantage because he was sick. He's saying that all these things happened and he was unaware. I didn't know who Wes Huff was. I was ambushed. I was caught off guard. It didn't show any of that. If anything, it showed that Billy Carson was way in above his head. that he had no idea who Wes Huff was because he didn't do his research. And he was complaining about him being sick as if that played a part in his effectability, and how effective he was, of how he conversed. There was no indication within the conversation, within the hour, 30-minute conversation, that showed that you had any lack of judgment or lack of understanding or lack of ability for that matter. But it did show that you are lying, right? The debate showed that you were lying. And your response video to this whole phenomenon, this whole pushback on you, calling you fake and fraud, this pushback is well deserved. Because for years, Billy Carson, you have lied to the masses. You have misled. You have told false statements. You have lied and only for your personal gain. Within your response, you have bragged about you having elevators in your house. You bragged about having this and that and having all these luxuries that many people are not afforded. Unfortunately, those luxuries are afforded to you based on your deception. And what you're really upset about is the fact that your cow, your deceptive cash cow, is being dismantled and destroyed. And that is what you're really upset about. And you're upset that your credibility is now shot. Your statement about the Sinai Bible can no longer go unimpeded, right? It can now be pushed back on because we have someone in Wes Huff who have shown the world literally what a fraudulent, deceiving individual that you are, Billy Carson. And it is great to see that. It is outstanding to see that. And I would encourage all my Christian brothers and sisters out there, as I conclude this video, that don't be afraid of Billy Carson. Billy Carson is using this whole "I'll sue you" lawsuit, threatening the lawsuits and things like that in order to try to stop you from pushing back on him. This is what you call bully tactics. Billy the Bully Carson. That's his new name. Billy the Bully Carson. This is all bully tactics to try to stop you as a believer from defending your faith. And this is what it boils down to, guys. When Christians stand 10 toes down and don't budge on what they believe, that's when we are strong in Christ. Don't be flimsy. Don't be whimsical. Don't be afraid, because individuals like Billy Carson will not win. They will lose. And it's by the grace of God and the power of the Holy Spirit indwelling his people that his victory is seen. And so all in all, Billy Carson's statement last night was a complete farce, a complete nonsense, and it was not one that could substantially stand up under critical analysis. And I pray that this video will help you with that analysis. With all that said, I pray that God will bless you and keep you. And remember, to all my brothers and sisters in Christ, keep the good fight. Keep fighting the good fight, and don't let individuals like Billy Carson get away with what he's doing, because he's a liar and he's a deceiver, and God wins in the end. That's all I have for you. May God bless you, and may God keep you.